All right. Good morning, everybody. I'm so happy to be with you today with a good friend of ours. His name is Yoav Rotem. He's a guide in Israel, and we've gotten to know him over the past year and a half and have really been inspired by his story and his wonderful gifting and guiding. And he's generous. He's given us a few minutes of his time this morning to share with us about things that are going on in Israel. We just thought it'd be nice to do a video for you to share with you firsthand what Israelis are experiencing right now. And so, Yoav, thank you for making the time, my friend. It's good to see your face. And we've had a few minutes to talk just before starting here, and wonderful to get acquainted and hear how things are going for you. I'd love for you to share, if you could, just a little bit about how things are going in Israel and what you've been experiencing personally, what the country's experiencing, and really just helping to acquaint the American audience here with firsthand account of how the war is going.
Thank you, Bill, for having me here. And yeah, I mean, first of all, we should say happy Passover
Yes,
for the
happy
people here
Passover.
in Israel. And I maybe I'll start from now and go back in a way because back in time because now it's a holiday in Israel, which is a bit interesting. We've experienced a series of years of messing up with our holidays from COVID time all the way through the October 7th, and then the 2.5 years after that, which we had waves of tension and and the hostages and the soldiers going to the front and from our perspective, tourism is kind of disappearing, coming kind of going back and then cutting out again. So
Mhm.
it's all kind of a big story that again, I'll start from the holiday. Last night was, the Jews celebrating a big feast on the Passover night in Israel, and people try to be with their families. Thank God people has cars and they don't come for a whole week. They go to visit for one night. But what happened last night was that the Iranians and Hezbollah, using their proxies, apparently they know how to talk to each other, and they all had a series from the afternoon all the way to the night, series of rocket launching into Israel, which really was, the thing with the rocket launching in Israel is that I don't know if people knows that there's two two things. First of all, if you talk about people who lives closer to Lebanon, where Hezbollah launching rockets, sometimes you have 15 seconds if you're very close to the border, 30 seconds if you are few miles from the border. Uh, Siren comes, you have to find a shelter. In most of houses has a shelter. Unfortunately, many houses don't have a shelter, so you either sleep in the shelter or try to be next to it most of the time. And the rest of the country, when we're talking about missiles from Iran or Yemen, we just had two rockets being launched from Yemen. We're getting few minutes of alert, which means the phones, all phones, there's kind of an amazing system. You get kind of the phone is screaming at you, telling you be next to a shelter, and and then you have a siren. You have about a minute and a half to shelter yourself either in a house in what we call the mamad, the shelter safe room, or in a big public shelter if it's a parking lot in the big cities or public real shelters from heavy concrete walls that and the door is super important, heavy metal door, so the blast will not go into your room and kill everyone inside. So last night we had, I think, at once they launched about 10 rockets, almost, I mean, in 1 hour. So they, millions in Israel in the center are getting into shelters. And, think of driving the road, where do you hide? And they tell you you have to stop because if people get, if something falls next to you, there is a strong likelihood that you will get hurt from the glass of your car. So it's better to get off the car, lean on the side of the road, and protect your head. And then statistics shows that most of us survive.
Mhm.
And so that's a little bit of the reality of the holiday. And last night we're in the center of Israel, Tel Aviv, and the area. People woke up for sirens and alerts. Now you can turn off your phone, sleep in a shelter, and sleep a whole night. But again, if either you don't have in Tel Aviv, most people don't have safe rooms in their homes.
Mhm.
Where we live not far away from Jerusalem, so we don't have a safe room. We have to run to our neighbors.
Hmm.
So if it's raining outside and it's night, so imagine yourself finding your shoes,
Hmm.
your umbrella, in if it's raining, and it brings weird things, funny
Hmm.
stories, and a lot of bonding with the neighbors.
It's quite an ordeal. I don't think that it's an experience that Americans here can acclimate to very easily, if at all, because it's so foreign to us. The homeland here hasn't been attacked since September 11th. And that was a very dislocating experience for the American people because we hadn't experienced something like that before, nothing that dramatic. And so, you just described the recent history of the Israeli people from COVID to October 7th. You've had neighbors on your borders for generations now who have wanted to eradicate the Israeli people and the Jewish state. And so it's become a part really of the family history of generationally over there for so many people. And here in the US, we really struggle to understand it. So I appreciate you taking the time to kind of detail that for us because that helps us to know how we can be praying for you. Having to get up in the middle of the night, run to a shelter, having that short time frame, having your loved ones with you, and then having to
But
shepherd them, especially if you have kids, into a safe environment. It's
Bill,
quite a sacrifice.
I want to, yeah, it's a big sacrifice because our life are kind of aside of the fear and the fact that you have something flying above your head that can kill you almost every every day.
Mhm.
It's also killing you're killing our business and killing our life, the education system of
Yeah.
Israel, like COVID. You know it from COVID. All
Mhm.
kids are out of school because the schools, even if they have shelters, they don't have enough time to put all the kids into the shelter. So they keep the kids at home and do the Zooms, and which again, it creates amazing community life. In our community, we're in a kibbutz not far from Jerusalem. The kids are, when you know that someone has a shelter at home, you allow your kid to go to visit him.
Mhm.
So the kids are not educated. They're doing what, I mean, it's like a summer break in March,
Mhm.
uh, but kind of like quarantine in a way because you don't want to drive too much again because of the fear of siren on the road. But I do want
Mhm.
to. I think one of the things that people around the world has hard time to understand is the following. Israel did attack Iran and America together. Israel and America attacking together this evil regime that have been trying to kill me personally, and I'll share it in a second why, for so many times. But the difference between the attacks that you see, and it's hard to see it because the media is not really understanding it. The difference is very clear. Israel and America, in this case, have been trying to differentiate between targets of military targets of the revolution in Iran, it's the Revolutionary Guards, or in Lebanon, it's Hezbollah, targets that are used to kill us, so we try to prevent us being killed by attacking it. And this is happening in Gaza all the time. Unfortunately, of course, there is damage to the surroundings. Sometimes innocents are getting killed, which is horrible. But there's a huge difference with the Iranians and Hezbollah shooting and launching rockets every day to literally civilian population and civilian areas, neighborhoods. And if you just look at the hits in Israel, you'll see that I mean, most of what got hit were apartments or even kindergartens that thank God it was at night that the kids were not there or the kids are not there because of the instructions not being there. Few daycares were hit by a direct rocket
Mhm.
from Iran in around Tel Aviv, which is horrible. Now, I told you I'll share a bit of a personal story. I was born right next to the border with Lebanon, next to Caesarea Philippi, in a kibbutz, the smallest kibbutz next to the waterfall of the Banias, where with your groups you go to Caesarea Philippi. I was born an hour away walk from there, and I was born in '82. And in '82, Israel goes into Lebanon to push the terrorists from the border. They were shooting Katyusha rockets back then, I mean, until lately, we did not have this system of alerting us. I remember as a child in the more in the beginning of the 90s, we had rounds with Hezbollah. Hezbollah is an arm of Iran that Iran funds and established. They've been shooting at us rockets, and since we didn't have the detecting system, we slept in an underground bomb shelter in bunk beds for weeks as kids. Weeks sleeping underground, the showers and water and bathroom in the bomb shelter. And we just thank God today that we have this air defense of the Iron Dome and the Arrow system and the slingshot and the laser, together with the warning that they are giving us, which enable us to live above ground and run to the shelter when we need, and we don't have to stay there all day.
Hmm.
So Hezbollah is the same Hezbollah that was trying to shoot my parents when I was born in the 80s and me since I was born. I remember in 1996, we were living there in the north, and we got kind of a voucher or something for a hotel in Tiberias, which is still in the north, but it wasn't bombarded by Hezbollah. And as we load the car, we hear a whistle, boom, explosion next to the parking lot in the kibbutz, in the avocado trees. I remember that. We rushed to load the cars and we ran out to the Sea of Galilee, to Tiberias, for a week. We stayed in 1996. It was then.
Hmm.
So hopefully this will be the last time we need to do it, because the IDF now is doing a good job. Unfortunately, soldiers are getting killed, but trying to push Hezbollah further away from Israel by brutal and aggressive way, unfortunately, from the border, and hopefully with the Lebanese new government, this arm Hezbollah.
Hmm. Yeah, thank you for that. That background is so important for people to understand, and to hear personally from you, I think is tremendously helpful, because the much of the propaganda, the anti-war propaganda that we're seeing here in the US, doesn't bother to get involved with the history and the nuance of why these events are converging the way that they are right now. One of the challenging things to communicate to people has been that there's a long established history of aggression and violence toward the Jewish people by their enemies on their borders, and that those enemies are proxies of the largest state sponsor of terror in the Middle East, which is Iran. And that this network, this web, has in fact, even over the decades, has exacted casualties on U.S. servicemen and women. The bombing of the Marine barracks in Beirut, of course, and then of course Soleimani was responsible for so much of the roadside casualties, roadside bombing casualties that occurred when we were fighting in Iraq. He was instrumental in helping to propagate that type of asymmetrical warfare. And so, when we see Israel having done the hard work, October 7th really ultimately ended up backfiring terribly on these terror proxies, because on the other side of that event, how could Israel not respond? How could Israel not come together as a nation and decide in solidarity across all the diverse strata in Israel? You have uniform belief and conviction and understanding that now is the time that we're going to eliminate this threat from our lives. And Israel takes decisive action after the 7th of October to completely decimate Hamas, to remove its leadership, to send it back, as to use a term that the Secretary of War here has been using recently, to send them back to the Stone Age, so that they cannot continue to inflict harm on the Israeli population. And then the Israelis do the same thing with Hezbollah. They decide to take the initiative and to marginalize and mitigate the threat of Hezbollah from across the border up in the north, even doing that today, continuing to do that today. The net result of all of that is that we now are in a position where we can address, as many have called it, the head of the snake, the source of all of this influence in the Middle East, this malign influence in the Middle East. And the reason why the president here and the prime minister work so closely together and have engaged in these joint military actions is because we see an opportunity here, maybe that we'll never see again, maybe, and certainly haven't seen in a generation, where Iran is weakened to the point where we can address the threat directly from the source and cut the head of this snake off, and really hopefully change the axis of power in the Middle East and influence in the Middle East in a very significant way that will leave a safer world for our children. And the reason why I think it's so important to hear from your perspective the sacrifices that the Israelis are making in the process of accomplishing these goals. Is that the loss of life of our servicemen and women is a sacred cost that gets paid on the battlefield that could never be minimized. The families who have to live with that sacrifice for the rest of their lives deserve to be honored. And we do honor those sacrifices. Those sacrifices are made for the purpose of a greater cause of accomplishing peace in a way that's lasting, significant, and real. And clearly, with the history that you've just described, it can't be easily debated that we should sit idly by and allow Iran to develop nuclear weapons, not address the threat, not remove that even as a possibility on the table. Geopolitically, look at how we deal with Korea, North Korea, rather, very differently, very tentatively at times. Because they have nuclear capabilities, I can't even imagine what it would be like dealing geopolitically with the mullahs, the radical clerics in Iran, if they had nuclear capabilities. And so I think that Bibi and President Trump are taking a very important opportunity here to address this decisively. And in fact, the news reporting is incredible. The gains that they've made, they fly freely across the skies in Iran. They're uncontested. They're picking targets at will. And they're right now operating a strategy just to degrade Iran so significantly that it'll be a long time, if ever, that they'll be able to mount the same kind of threat that they have attempted to up to this point. So, I think it's great to hear from you about what the Israeli people are sacrificing. Primarily, you're the forward operating base, I like to say, of Western civilization. You're right there in the middle, a democracy in the Middle East. You have a very diverse society. People don't understand that people of many different religious backgrounds and ethnic backgrounds all live side by side. And when you talk to the rank and file people on the ground, they all want to live in peace. They just want to live in
Yes.
peace and provide for
We,
their families. And so,
we specifically,
yes, please.
we live, that we in our community, and I just invited you to visit.
Yes.
We live, we have two sides of our community has Arabs. One side in the West Bank, in Samaria, in part of Judea, Benjamin land, we have very hostile village. And on the
Mhm.
other side, we have Israeli Arabs that some of them are my friends. We drive through the village, we do our groceries there. It's kind of like people that see that can't understand why they do, what do they see, because Jews and
Mhm.
Arabs living next to each other. Yeah, and it's the reality on the ground. But I do want to say, Bill, something that sits here on my heart is, first of all, you mentioned President Trump and the people and so American soldiers who sacrificed their life. Um, Here in Israel, we feel it. We feel the support. We're thankful. We're full of thanks to the president, to the American soldiers. And I know I have friends who are working with pilots and air defense people that are cooperating with the Americans here on the ground. They're saying there is an amazing cooperation, a huge appreciation to each other. And we in Israel, we have been through, I mean, I knew it before, but a lot of people after October 7th, understanding one thing, that you better listen to your enemies. And when the enemy, like Iran, it's funny that one of the leaders just said that they have nothing hostile with Americans and they love. They've been chanting "Death to America" and "Death to Israel" in
Mhm.
every ceremonial protest that they've had. What do they mean by "Death to America"? Do they mean like "Let's be friends"? No, they mean "Death to America," and they're actively were. If people wants to check, it's amazing to see how Hezbollah is very active in Mexico, and even on American ground. Some evidence to tries to assassinate President Trump, and there's some things that I think people don't hear every day because the media is hiding or because it's too hidden. Sometimes it's not very clear the connection because they know how to hide it.
Mhm.
And again, just amazing to it's so clear the enemy and amazing things. You mentioned what Israel and America led by President Trump, and and Prime Minister Netanyahu are doing here, there's aside of the war, there's a lot of development in the allies around here. When you see Europe, Europe, which used to be a strong ally of Israel, is shifted towards radical of I don't know even how to call it. I don't think it's really liberalism. It's even beyond that. Influenced by a lot of radical Muslim movements and others that took over some parts of Europe, and they're not anymore supportive of let's say our side. And you see that Arab countries like Saudi and the Emirates and Bahrain, all of these people are going to be strong allies of Israel soon, as I read the map and what they're. It's all under secret, but I believe it's going to shift and it's going to bring peace in the Middle East, and people will. It's going to be. I mean, that's what I pray. That's what I see in my in the vision, and it's going to be amazing here.
Yes, it will be, and we've seen it so many times before, where these seasons of war on the other side break out into these wonderful stretches and seasons of peace, where ironically, as dramatic as the reporting is coming out of the Middle East, these wonderful stretches on the other side of the hard work that's done here, where people do get to enjoy seasons of peace and of calm and get to live their lives and prosper. And we've seen it ourselves. Even after the October 7th attack, we were in with a number of groups, and we got a chance to experience Israel in a deeply personal way. The nation was grieving, but we were still received so graciously by the people who served our groups. And we had opportunity even during that time of travel to spend time with refugees who had come down from the north and were staying in hotels around the Galilee, something that you alluded to earlier, and to talk to those families. And it was wonderful to talk to them and to see how encouraging it was to see Americans there. The Israeli families who are maybe not familiar with tourism directly, maybe they do other things, but they're having to stay in a hotel because they need to move away from the border. And this, of course, happened for a time after October 7th. And it would say, why are you here? What brings you to this country? And it provides us with a wonderful opportunity to remind them of the amazing biblical history that the land tells, contains and tells and shares, that this wonderful heritage that we have as a human race because of the beautiful things that have been born out in that land and how they've affected history in such a deeply intimate and profound way. And we can come in this generation and visit the people of that land and look at the archaeological record that's there and have our hearts stirred for all the beautiful truth that we find in Scripture. And so there's on the other side of things like this wonderful opportunities to come and to have a pilgrimage and to be acquainted personally with God's people and with the amazing, as I said, the amazing history and archaeology there. And so we're looking forward to that. And that one of the reasons why you and I wanted to talk today was because we wanted to make sure that we convey to those who have it on their hearts that they have a stirring to want to go and visit Israel. Do not give up on that dream or that hope, because there are going to be windows of opportunity that will open and where God will graciously allow us to come in safely and to enjoy an unbelievable and fulfilling time. We've seen the Lord meet us over and over again as we traveled the land and really bless people and give them something that I think is more important today than it has ever been, which is a personal understanding of the one Jewish state, a personal understanding of the Jewish people, a personal understanding of the story of Scripture that's still unfolding there in that part of the world. And when people are able to come and experience the hospitality, the friendliness, and the engagement with the people there in that nation, to really understand their heart and desire to live in peace, and couple that as well with all of their understanding of Scripture and of the story of redemption and the arc of history, they become different. It really changes you. It really does change you. It really does help you understand that there is a sovereign God above it all, who is going to work all of history to His ends, and that we can trust that plan as it continues to roll out. So,
And it touches the heart of the locals as well.
yes, yeah. So I wanted to, any closing remarks that you have that you want to share? How can we be praying for you? The people who are seeing this, I'm sure their hearts are going to be stirred. There's such a love for Israel among the community of people that we belong to. And, how can they be praying for you? What can we be praying about in terms of how the needs of people in the land can be met? And, just overall, we want to have you on our hearts and minds. So please.
Yes, so we definitely need safety and above all peace. Because peace will bring prosperity, peace will bring us back to work, peace will bring the kids back to the educational system,
Mhm.
and it's amazing. I mean, yeah, I believe peace is it's part of our prayers all the time,
Yeah.
um, and so safety and peace and bonding together and see everyone in the land. It brings
Hmm.
joy to the land. And so again, yeah, safety, peace, um, and um, and back to work. Is for me personally, I I I want to go back to work so badly.
Yeah.
That is important.
You have such a wonderful gift of showing the land and introducing people to the land, Yoav. I think it'd be wonderful to see you get back to work. You're a wonderful ambassador for your country, for those who visit. And so
Thank
I'm going
you.
to tag you in the video when I post this online, and I want to invite anybody who's watching the video to send a friend request over to Yoav and just to see his content. He does regular segments on CBN as well that are more focused on the archaeology, guiding related subject matter, and he's just such a fantastic gift for all of those things. So, Yoav, I want to thank you for doing this video with me today, and I pray that as people watch it, that their hearts will be stirred and that they will have a great sense of compassion for what the Jewish people are not only sacrificing for the betterment of the whole world, but also what the people on the ground need in terms of prayer and support for what they're going through in the course of trying to make this world a safer place. And so we appreciate you and we love you and we'll be praying for you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.